everybody. I'm Gina Acosta, Editorial Director of Progressive Grocer, and welcome to another episode of Top Women in Grocery, a podcast focused on the trends, topics, and interests that move women forward in grocery retail. So in this podcast series, we are really shining a light on extraordinary women in the grocery industry who have had successful careers and interesting lives, and who are also making a positive impact in their workplaces and in their communities and in the industry overall. So today I'm so excited because we have a super special guest on the show, Emily Metz, President and CEO of the American Egg Board, the national marketing organization for the U.S. egg industry, and one of the most important commodity boards in the nation that's driving the future of the egg category. So in this role, Emily directs strategy and oversees national programs spanning consumer marketing and PR, CPG manufacturing and food service engagement and R&D, health and nutrition research and communications, and exports to drive demand for U.S. eggs and egg products domestically and abroad. An attorney specializing in food and drug law. There's lots of attorneys in my family, by the way, Emily, so very familiar with the whole lawyer mind. Emily has held communications, marketing, and advocacy positions at the USDA, the Animal Agriculture Alliance, the National Milk Producers Federation, and most recently at the world's largest animal genetics company, Genus PLC. So I don't think that there could be a more pivotal or perfect time for Emily to be on this podcast, considering what's happening right now in the egg category and in the egg aisle of every grocery store, probably in North America. So Emily, welcome to the TWIG Podcast.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here. Happy New Year. And I think you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot happening in eggs right now. So I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely. Happy New Year to you too. Okay, so Emily, let me just ask you first off, talk to everybody about what the American Egg Board is, what it does, and a little bit more about how you came to lead it.
Sure. I've had a heck of a ride. The best laid plans never go as planned, but my career journey has been really fun. And so I'm truly blessed to be able to say that I've had fun in every role that I've had the chance to hold. The American Egg Board is really special because we represent America's egg farmers. So the very people that raise the hens that make the eggs that are in 94+% of refrigerators right now across America. I represent the people that make it all happen, the farmers. And so the farmers came together over 40 years ago and said, we want to create an organization that builds demand for eggs, both here in the U.S. and around the world, and markets eggs on our behalf. They basically said, we want to worry about the farming. We want someone else to worry about what to do with the eggs and how to make consumers eat more of them and help educate about what we do and what farming is and does. And so they created the American Egg Board. And so I'm really privileged to lead it as a young woman. I feel really honored to be at the helm and be a girl boss and all that good stuff. But I've had a really interesting career path. Agriculture was sort of the career that chose me, and I've never looked back. I was a speechwriter at the Department of Agriculture in college, and then fell in love with farmers. I had the chance to travel and really be with the people that produce our food, and probably a lot of the values that are the same as they are with the grocery retail community. They're some of the best people. They believe in their local communities. They believe in families. They have strong values. They want to pass things on and make things better. And that's really what drove me to work for farmers. And I worked, as funny as it sounds, all across the barnyard. I worked for beef farmers, spent a lot of time in dairy with pig farmers, and now I'm in eggs and really honored to be here. So I've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I probably know more than the average person about how our food comes to the table, and I'm really lucky to have that knowledge.
Wow. I need to spend more time talking to you, Emily, beyond this podcast. Okay. So what are the major issues in the egg category now?
Well, there's a few. I don't think you can turn on the TV right now without hearing about eggs. And we understand that. And I think for a lot of your audience probably listening right now, you are frustrated because you're on the front lines of having to deal with people who are upset that they either can't get the eggs they want, the eggs that they want are more expensive than they were previously. And so I first want to say thank you for taking the time to understand what's going on. Thank you for being on the front lines and having to explain. I feel like a lot of your audience listening has been on the front lines for a number of years here on a variety of issues. And so I want to first start by saying thank you. Our farmers are frustrated too. We are in a very challenging environment right now due to a virus that is a little bugger, quite literally and figuratively, called highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI, or commonly known as bird flu. And we've been dealing with this on and off since 2015, which is the first time it really showed up in the U.S. in commercial poultry farms. And we've learned a lot of really hard lessons, and our farmers have invested a huge amount. But over the last few years, the virus has evolved and changed. And last year was a very hard year for us because we were battling a virus that we'd actually gotten pretty good at dealing with, at managing our operations around. But then we had two new variables that entered the scene. The first was dairy. There were dairy farms that were becoming infected with HPAI, and that was getting transmitted back and forth because hopefully a lot of your audience knows, but maybe some don't, that farms tend to be in areas together. So there's pig farms, dairy farms, birds, all kind of in the same area. And so we had virus spread. And then the second variable is, as we look at evolving climate and weather conditions and global warming and all of those things, that has a ripple down effect. And where that ripples when it comes to bird flu is that bird flu has historically been transmitted through the wild bird population. And so we were able to really predict, based on the flight patterns, when we were going to see bird flu and when we needed to be, prepared for that. Well, with wildfires, with tornadoes, hurricanes, all of those things that we saw yet last year, those birds got displaced. And so we had wild birds circling around, coming back, changing their flight patterns, flying in areas they'd never flown before. And those were both new variables that our farmers had to deal with. And all that drove increases in outbreaks last year. And that really tightened the supply. And so it's been an interesting, challenging year for my producers. We share your frustration, and we're here to help, is what I can say.
Okay, so I think you talked a little bit about this, but how is HPAI? And I think it's fascinating that AI is part of that acronym or whatever. But because AI is such a big topic, and just in grocery retail in general at the moment. How is it impacting egg production specifically?
Yes. Well, so over the last year, we've lost more than 40 million hens to the virus, which is an astronomical number. We had a lull kind of in the middle of the year, and then unfortunately outbreaks ramped back up in the tail end of the year in places like California, Iowa, and some big, heavy egg producing areas that really impacted us. And what that does is, I think a lot of people hear, there was an outbreak here, or there was a spike here, and think, well, the next week things will kind of return to normal. Unfortunately, that's not the case, because we have to follow a lot of procedures and government protocols in order to be able to safely and humanely euthanize those animals, because this virus is unfortunately fatal in birds. And so we do have to euthanize for humane purposes. Then we have to sanitize all those barns, and that takes quite a bit of time. And then we have to meet certain standards in order to be able to bring new birds called pullets back into those barns. And then those pullets need to get to a maturity level that they start producing eggs. So all of that in total takes about 6 months. From the time that the outbreak happens to the time that those hens are finally producing eggs that are flowing into the retail space. And so every single time there's a new outbreak, you're starting that clock over again on a large number of production. And when the numbers are as high as 40 plus million birds, that's a significant percentage of our flock, and that's going to take time to get back to status quo. And basically the net is we need a sustained period to get back to an equilibrium. And that sustained period can only happen when we stop having new outbreaks of bird flu. And we just haven't had that sustained period, unfortunately.
Okay. So what specific steps is the industry taking to mitigate the spread of HPAI?
We are doing absolutely everything we can. Like I said, we had these 2 new variables that we've had to manage around. And I think there's a lot of learning and evolving that needs to be done in managing those 2 new variables. But this industry has invested millions of dollars into improved biosecurity. We, fun fact, make all of our poultry workers shower in and shower out before they enter our farms. We try to group workers together so that they're not coming in individually, maybe picking up a particle of virus that's, in the ground or in the air, but they're grouped together. We wash our trucks when they're entering the farms. We have farms that are installing laser light systems to try to reduce the incidence of wild birds landing on their property. Gone is the day of the scarecrow. We're in high-tech AI space now, baby, and we are throwing absolutely everything we can at this problem. But there is a need for new research, and there's a need for continuing to up the understanding of this virus because it is evolving.
Right. Just a tremendous amount of work and investment. My goodness. So what measures are producers implementing to ensure continuity of supply despite the challenges posed by HPAI?
Well, I think what I would say is, number one, this industry is really resilient and collaborative. Not in a bad way, but in a way that if we know that a certain area has been hit or impacted, we're able to reposition to a certain extent eggs from other areas of the country to help offset. So, for example, California got hit very hard at the tail end of last year. And so we're able to send eggs to California from other areas of the country to help supplement their kind of domestic California production. But that doesn't come without challenges either, unfortunately. And the cage-free mandates in a lot of these states has complicated that supply chain a little bit because those mandates are still in effect. And so the eggs coming into those states still have to meet those specifications even when there's a shortage in supply. And so moving eggs around is a little bit more challenging today than it would have been, let's say, 10 years ago before some of those mandates took effect. But we're still doing the best we can. And so to date, we've heard and we've seen, and hopefully your audience has as well, those shortages are intermittent, limited, regional, and moving forward quickly. And so, within 1 or 2 days, we're able to backfill that supply that might have been missing. And I think, unfortunately, that's going to be the situation for a while, but we're working as hard as we can to get farms back on board as quickly as possible.
How is AEB working with retailers? What measures are you guys taking to help retailers, address concerns around pricing volatility and shortages and all of that?
Well, like I said, we know you guys and your audience is on the front lines. You're taking the brunt of it. No one wants to stare down an angry customer that can't get eggs, especially on the holidays when everyone's baking and cooking. And so we're hugely appreciative. We have a whole host of resources that we've made available: in-store signage, talking points, fact sheets, materials that takes the burden hopefully off of all of you and puts it back on us and the egg farmers to really explain what's going on. And I think the biggest thing is conversation. I do think, and we're seeing in some of our insights data that we have at AEB, that people understand the reason for this. It doesn't necessarily make them less frustrated about the situation, but they understand that no one's trying to gouge anybody. No one's trying to take advantage of anybody. This isn't about leveraging an opportunity. It's about an industry that's really struggling right now and is doing the best we can. And so we've seen that come back in messaging over and over again and in the data that we have on how consumers are reacting to this.
Good. Yeah, because, it's a really big challenge for retailers dealing with, there's just so much chatter on the internet about, this is a conspiracy, no, this is just a really, really big, bad problem. And, the farmers and everyone is just, doing the best that they can to to ameliorate the situation. So
I'll certainly say I did not have eggs becoming a political hot potato. On my bingo card for 2024, I got to the point where I was like, can we just stop talking about eggs in a debate?
Exactly.
That would be great. Both sides, I didn't think we'd see it where both sides agreed on something, but they both agreed on eggs. And so, all joking aside, I think what that shows us is the bright side is people really love eggs, that they're truly of value to them, that they see that they are upset when they can't have them because they rely on them as part of their, core menu items at home and away from home. And so that's obviously the upside to all this is we know that eggs are beloved and that means a lot to us and to our farmers.
Indeed. So how are you guys helping to educate consumers about the challenges that HPAI poses, to price and supply? Yep. You talked a little bit about the signage and all that, but consumer education.
We're doing what I'm doing now. I've been up and down the media landscape. We're making ourselves, radically available, and really talking. And we've been making our farmers available, which isn't their natural inclination,
right?
Because they're very focused on the task at hand, which is raising healthy, happy hens to make great eggs. But we've been making them available so that people can really put a name and a face to the people behind their food and understand kind of what they're grappling with. And I think being transparent that this is an industry that is facing an enormous challenge right now, but they're doing so, they're taking it head on and just being really open and honest about that. That's I think the best anyone can do. And that's certainly what we're trying to do right now.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about the cage-free situation. The cage-free transition has been a major focus for the egg industry. And, there have been other, transitions as well. Can you share some of the progress that's been made so far on cage-free and, particularly in light of the challenges posed by HPAI?
Sure. I mean, you look at an industry, and I said resilient before, but I would also use another R word, which is responsive. This industry is, if you say you want something, if the consumers tomorrow turn around and said we wanted a blue egg, our farmers would figure out a way to make a blue egg. And that's what they've done with cage-free, right? Since 2012, when we started to see statewide mandates pop up and consumer interest grow in cage-free options for them, we've had production grow in cage-free more than 434%. And no, I did not misstate that statistic. That is actually accurate. 434% growth in cage-free egg production since 2012. What that means is we, at this moment, have about 105 million cage-free hens that are producing about 30 billion cage-free eggs a year. And that number represents about 40% of our total flock right now. And so that's a huge response to what we've seen in the market and what we've seen from consumers, and response, like I said, to these cage-free mandates that have happened in some states as well. Like I said, it's complicated right now because bird flu does not discriminate. It affects farms of all shapes and sizes. And unfortunately, in 2024, it had a disproportionate impact on the cage-free bird population. So even though only 40% of our flock is cage-free, 60% of the total outbreaks in 2024 were on cage-free facilities. So there was more cage-free facilities that were affected in 24 with bird flu. And so that's skewed our supply chain even further and had indeed variables happen.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. So it makes sense. It makes sense that they would be more affected because they're cage-free. So going back to retailers, they often face difficult decisions about whether to proceed or delay their cage-free commitments. What advice or resources does the AEB provide to help them navigate these decisions specifically?
Yeah. Well, I think the simplest advice is get in touch with us. Let's work through this decision together. There's a lot of variables and we can do a lot of analysis for you on an individualized basis for your exact business model. But what we really will focus on in working with you to understand the timing of your commitments and your decisions is around this idea of true demand. I talked just a second ago about the enormous growth in production. So in supply of cage-free, what we haven't seen is the demand for that supply match that supply. And I think that's for a variety of factors. COVID, for example, we saw the price differential between conventional and cage-free really equalize or come very close. And at that point, we did see consumers choosing a cage-free egg over a conventional egg. But we have a lot of egg options out there. And what we're seeing is consumers are weighing a lot of variables. Price, obviously right now, availability, different values that they might have personally. And so all of those factors are coming into the purchasing behavior. And what we're not seeing is that strong demand for cage-free specifically match the strong supply. And so we want to work with you guys on your commitments, on your communication, and really help make the best decision based on your consumer coming in to the store and what that future consumer might be looking to do.
Awesome. So transitioning to cage-free eggs involves coordination across the supply chain, which you've talked about. So what examples can you share of how producers, retailers, and organizations like AEB are working together to drive progress now?
Yep. It's a true partnership. And what's really interesting is that I think perhaps not everyone understands that we need all of our partners in order to make these transitions successful. And what I mean by that is shifting from a conventional barn to a cage-free barn requires a huge capital investment. And our farmers, like I would assume many of your audience, when they're making those capital investments, they're not paying cash, they're taking a loan and they're getting financing for that investment. And what is becoming more and more challenging is securing that financing, because a lot of times that financing wants a guarantee that there's going to be an end customer in place before they're willing to make the decision and the commitment. And so we have to have everyone aligned and aware of the market conditions and the need for capital, the need for investment to build those facilities and transition those facilities. And that takes a true partnership to get there. And so, like I said, at the start, if people want a blue egg, our farmers will find a way to produce it. But we've got to work together to actually make that production happen. And I think that's true of the cage-free. This is $1 billion investment. It's the biggest investment that these multi-generational farms will make. And we need to really partner with the retail community to be assured that those investments are going to pull through to the ultimate consumer demand, and work with you guys on that.
Emily, I'm pretty sure that there's like a bunch of different kinds of blue eggs at the grocery store now. Since you mentioned it twice, I'm like, there's somebody doing blue eggs. Next we're gonna need like purple eggs.
We're gonna need purple, pink, all the colors of the rainbow. We'll be like Skittles in the grocery store.
Yeah, Taylor Swift eggs. I don't know. Okay, so let me ask you about consumer behavior, right? So have you noticed any shifts? I know you have, in consumer behavior or expectations in response to the current egg market dynamics?
So what I can tell you is this is a good news story. So I feel like I've unfortunately had to be a little bit of a downer this podcast. But the upside here is, like I said, we are seeing consumer demand be at record high levels for eggs right now.
Yep.
Normally the summer, as I'm sure a lot of your audience can attest, is a fairly slow period for us. It's demand slumps off. People are outside, they're barbecuing, they're on the go. Eggs haven't always fit into that kind of cooking style or meal occasion. That was not the case the summer of 24. Egg demand remained very high at record high levels. We are approaching a 22-week year-over-year record high consumption and demand levels for eggs. And so I think that we're seeing that even at an elevated price, consumers are still seeing a huge amount of value in eggs as a protein and the nutrition it provides, and kind of that cost per protein, per calorie, all of the benefits you get for eggs still remains a really, really amazing value. So the good news story is demand is there, baby. Right. We are strong on demand. We are working to continue to be strong on supply, and we're working as hard as we can on that. But the good news story is consumers want eggs. They're using eggs in new ways. We're seeing eggs come on menus in new and exciting ways. In-home preparation outside of the breakfast occasion is rising. So some really exciting demand indicators happening on the consumer side.
Oh my goodness. There's so many egg recipes and egg, meal solutions all over TikTok and Instagram and every social. It's just, I feel like that's all I see is egg recipes when I get online. So yeah, eggs are huge right now. Okay, last question. What steps is AEB planning to take in the next few months to support producers and retailers maintaining this momentum, right? This demand for eggs and maintaining momentum on any of these other initiatives that you've discussed today?
Yeah. For me, I've always marked my career. One of my goals is look at every challenge as an opportunity. And I think for us as an industry, that's what we're facing right now is an enormous opportunity to vanquish a valiant foe and conquer HPAI. But more than that, to really push eggs forward. I just read that the first gen betas were just born January 1 of this year, New Year's babies. That it's a new generation. And what that means to me is a new generation of future consumers that are forming opinions. Well, obviously not today because they're newborns, but are going to be forming opinions, are going to be forming taste preferences and purchasing behaviors. And we have a great opportunity to help shape their parents, help shape them, turn them into egg lovers, make sure that we're seeing eggs in new and exciting ways, and really looking at the global market for eggs. We produce food here in this country in a safe, wholesome, sustainable way. We produce it better than any country in the world, and a lot of the world wants U.S. eggs and egg products, so we're looking at how we can make those available around the world as well. So lots of exciting stuff for 2025.
For sure. Emily, what a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I was excited to be here, and I look forward to working with all your listeners this year.
Awesome. So for more information about the Top Women in Grocery podcast, please visit progressivegrocer.com/podcast. You can also subscribe to this series wherever you typically listen to podcasts, including on Apple, Google, and Spotify. And if you have an idea for a TWIG podcast topic, we really do want to hear from you. So please send me an email at gacosta@ensembleiq.com. I'm Gina Acosta. See you next time, and thanks for listening.